The stones of the Great Pyramid are not silent. They speak a language of precise angles and hidden ratios, a mathematical code embedded by ancient builders. This video will show you how to read that code, revealing a secret knowledge system that connects civilizations across the globe. You will learn to see ancient temples and monuments not as ruins, but as encrypted libraries. Why would cultures separated by oceans and millennia use the same complex geometry in their sacred sites? What profound message were they trying to preserve for the future? How much of our own scientific understanding was already written in stone thousands of years ago? By the end, you will possess a new lens to view history, one that deciphers the wisdom deliberately set in stone. What does it mean if our ancestors were master mathematicians? This mathematical language was not written on papyrus or clay tablets, but carved into the very bones of the earth. It communicates through proportion and angle, using numbers and geometry as its alphabet. Think of a musical chord where several notes played together create a single, beautiful harmony that is more than the sum of its parts. The ancient builders were composing in stone, creating architectural harmonies that resonated with meaning. They used universal constants, like the precise ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, as foundational words in this silent vocabulary. Why would they go to such extraordinary lengths? These structures were far more than temples or tombs. They were designed as permanent libraries, safeguarding humanity's most crucial knowledge against the ravages of time and catastrophe. A pyramid is both a majestic tomb and a complex calculator. A stone circle is both a ritual space and a precise astronomical observatory. This dual purpose transforms how we see every ancient monument. They were not just places of worship, but vessels of information built to last for millennia. The very stones are pages in an unburnable book, waiting for us to learn how to read them. This shared language of stone reveals its first and most profound principle through a pattern of shapes. Across the globe, from the sun-baked temples of Egypt to the meditative spaces of Hindu shrines, the same intricate geometric forms appear again and again. These are not mere decorations. They are a silent testimony to a shared understanding of the universe's fundamental blueprints. One of the most persistent of these patterns is known as the flower of life, a complex interlocking of circles found carved into ancient stone. In the East, mandalas present the same idea in vibrant color, intricate circles and squares representing the cosmos. Why would cultures with no known contact independently arrive at such similar and complex designs? The answer lies not in shared communication, but in shared observation. These builders were looking at the same world, the same stars, and the same patterns unfolding in nature, and they were recording what they saw. They recognized that certain shapes and ratios were fundamental to existence itself. This brings us to one of the most famous of these universal constants, the golden ratio. Its value is approximately 1.618, a number that seems to hold a special power in the natural world. You can find it in the elegant spiral of a nautilus shell, where each new chamber grows in perfect proportion to the last. You see it in the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, a design that maximizes packing efficiency. And astonishingly, you find this same ratio meticulously engineered into the very dimensions of the Parthenon in Greece. Its facade is a masterpiece of this divine proportion. This was not a coincidence. The ancient builders were actively using these geometric forms as a vocabulary. By embedding the golden ratio or the flower of life into a temple wall, they were doing much more than creating art. They were encoding a direct statement. They were saying that this human creation is built upon the same principles as the universe itself. The structure becomes a mirror of cosmic design, a place where the earthly and the celestial resonate in harmony. The building itself becomes a teacher, its stones whispering lessons about the fundamental order of all things. This same mathematical language extends from the geometry of the earth to the geometry of the heavens. If the first principle was about shape, the second is about motion. Ancient builders transformed their stone canvases into precise astronomical instruments, capturing the grand cycles of the cosmos in silent, immovable rock. Consider the Great Circle of Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain. For generations, it was seen as a mysterious ritual site, but on the morning of the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the heel stone, its rays piercing the heart of the monument. This is not a vague alignment. It is a perfect, repeatable event, a moment frozen in architecture. To achieve this, the builders had to perform complex calculations, accounting for the tilt of the Earth's axis and the slow wobble in its rotation over centuries. This was mathematics in action, a living equation set in stone. The ambition only grows when we look at the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Its four sides are aligned with the cardinal directions with an accuracy of less than a single degree of error. More astonishingly, narrow shafts run from the inner chambers deep inside the pyramid, piercing through millions of tons of stone to the outside world. For a long time, their purpose was a mystery. We now know these were not air vents. One set of shafts points directly toward the circumpolar stars, the so-called imperishable stars that never set. Another set aims precisely at the belt of the constellation Orion. These alignments were not symbolic guesses. They were deliberate targeting, requiring a profound understanding of the precession of the equinoxes, a cycle that takes 26,000 years to complete. The builders were not just marking the annual solstice. They were encoding a map of the sky that remains accurate across millennia. Why go to such incredible lengths? These structures were far more than cosmic calendars for planting crops. They were expressions of a fundamental belief in the harmony between heaven and earth. By aligning a temple with a star or a solstice sun, the builders were creating a physical link between our world and the cosmos. The building itself became a cosmic clock, tracking time on a scale far beyond a human lifetime. On the appointed day, when the sunlight struck a specific stone or illuminated a dark chamber, it was a moment of celestial confirmation. The heavens were speaking, and the temple was answering. This transformed the monument from a passive object into an active participant in the cosmic order. It was a perpetual reminder that the same mathematical laws that govern the stars also govern the stones beneath our feet. How did they achieve such precision without modern tools, and what does this tell us about their view of reality itself? But this mathematical language was not confined to aligning with the stars. It was also woven into the very fabric of the structures themselves, creating a silent music of proportion and form. This brings us to the third principle, the use of harmonic ratios and proportional systems. Ancient architects worked with a mathematical grammar, using specific, recurring ratios to achieve both structural stability and a deep, intuitive sense of beauty. A simple yet powerful example is the Pythagorean 3-4-5 triangle. By constructing a triangle with sides in that exact ratio, a builder could guarantee a perfect right angle, the fundamental cornerstone of stable construction. This was practical, hands-on mathematics, but they went far beyond the purely functional. Consider the Great Pyramid once more. The ratio of its perimeter to its height is a close approximation of 2 times pi, the constant defining the circle. This means the pyramid's dimensions seem to encode a fundamental relationship between a square and a circle, a geometric puzzle frozen in stone. centuries later and in a different part of the world, the master builders of Gothic cathedrals employed another ratio, the square root of 2, in their floor plans. This irrational number, approximately 1.414, creates a dynamic, expanding proportion that guides the eye upward, contributing to the soaring, heavenly feel of those vast spaces. Why were these specific numbers so important? They were not chosen at random. These ratios create visual harmony because they are found throughout the natural world. The Fibonacci sequence, where each number is the sum of the two preceding it, produces a series of numbers that, when used as ratios, approximate the golden ratio. You see this in the spiral of a galaxy and the branching of a tree. By building with these same proportions, the architects were making their creations resonate with the same underlying order as nature itself. The result is a structure that feels inherently balanced and correct, even to someone who has no knowledge of the math involved. It speaks directly to our subconscious. This standardized system of proportions was a form of encoded knowledge, a builder's secret code that ensured consistency and meaning across continents and millennia. A temple built with these ratios was more than a building. It was a physical manifestation of cosmic harmony, designed to evoke a specific emotional and spiritual response in anyone who entered. The stones were not just stacked, they were composed. Numbers themselves became a sacred vocabulary, carrying meanings far beyond their mathematical value. While geometry gave this ancient language its shape and astronomy its motion, numbers provided its hidden grammar. Builders embedded specific numerals into their designs as a form of esoteric code, where each figure held a layered significance tied to mythology, cosmology, and the human spirit. The number 72 offers a stunning example. This number is encoded into the geometry of the Pentagon building in the United States, where the angles between its points relate to 72-degree increments. But this is not a modern invention. It echoes ancient Babylonian astronomy, where the slow, backward drift of the stars through the constellations, known as the precession of the equinoxes, moves at a rate of 1 degree every 72 years. The appearance of 72 in such different contexts is not a coincidence. It is a deliberate marker, a numerical signature pointing to a profound understanding of cosmic time cycles that span thousands of years. Another powerful number is 108. In Hinduism and Buddhism, this is an exceptionally sacred number. There are 108 beads on a mala or prayer bracelet used for meditation. This same number frequently appears in the measurements of temples and stupas across Asia. Why this number? It is seen as a number of completeness, representing the universe and the human journey within it. By building a temple with dimensions or elements that total 108, the architects were infusing the structure with that symbolic meaning, making the building itself a tool for spiritual contemplation. This practice transforms a simple measurement into a profound statement. When you walk through a ruin, you are not just looking at collapsed walls, you are walking through a numerical story. The height of a column, the count of steps on a staircase, or the number of stones in a circle could all be part of a deliberate code. To understand these numbers is to begin reading the beliefs of the builders directly from the bones of their creations. The structure becomes a book written in integers, its chapters filled with celestial cycles and spiritual aspirations. What other stories are waiting to be decoded from the silent numbers etched in stone? This same language of numbers and geometry demanded a practical system for construction, a way to translate abstract ratios into physical stone. The fifth principle that emerges is modular design, the use of standardized units of measurement. Across the ancient world, from the stone circles of Europe to the temples of the Nile, builders worked not with random lengths but with a consistent, repeating module. In Neolithic Britain, researchers have identified what they call the megalithic yard, a unit of about 2.72 feet. This same measurement appears to have been used in the construction of stone circles hundreds of miles apart. In Egypt, the royal cubit was the fundamental standard, its length meticulously defined and used by artisans for thousands of years. This was not merely for convenience. This modularity embedded a mathematical system of replication and scaling directly into the architecture. Think of it like building with Lego bricks. Each brick is a simple, identical module, but by combining these simple units in different ways, you can construct something incredibly complex, from a car to a castle. The ancient builders were doing the same thing with their cubits and megalithic yards. They were using a standardized unit to generate complex, harmonious designs where every single part, from the smallest detail to the grandest wall, was in a precise mathematical relationship with the whole. This system ensured a profound visual and structural consistency. More than that, this principle of starting with a simple unit and repeating it to create a complex whole is strikingly similar to modern fractal geometry, where a simple pattern repeats itself at different scales to form intricate, self-similar shapes found throughout nature, like in a fern leaf or a coastline. The ancient builders grasped this concept of scalability intuitively. By employing a standard module, they could design a temple that felt unified and whole, because its entire form was an amplification of its smallest component. This reveals a level of planning and abstract mathematical thought that we rarely attribute to pre-industrial societies. The monument was not just built, it was grown from a single, repeating idea, a seed of measurement that blossomed into an entire stone ecosystem. This architectural conversation with the planet itself reveals our sixth principle: geodetic and geomantic alignments. The ancient builders did not see their creations as separate from the Earth, but as integral components of a living, breathing geography. They were weaving their monuments into the very fabric of the planet, aligning them with invisible lines of force and global measurements. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as the ultimate testament to this practice. Its location was not chosen at random. It sits at the precise intersection of the longest land meridian and the longest land parallel, effectively placing it at the center of the world's landmasses as known to its builders. But the encoding goes even deeper. The pyramid's perimeter, when measured in the ancient Egyptian unit known as the royal cubit, bears a direct relationship to the circumference of the Earth itself. The math is stunningly simple. If you take the pyramid's perimeter and multiply it by 43,200, you get a figure extremely close to the equatorial circumference of our planet. The number 43,200 is not arbitrary. It is a key precessional number, being exactly half of 86,400, the number of seconds in a single day. This is not a series of lucky coincidences. It is a deliberate, multi-layered code, embedding a unit of time and a measurement of the Earth into a single, local structure. How could a civilization, supposedly limited to its own river valley, possess such a precise understanding of the entire planet's dimensions? This suggests a knowledge of geodetic science, the measurement and representation of the Earth, that we are only now fully appreciating. Across the globe, other sites hint at similar principles. The concept of ley lines, those hypothetical alignments connecting ancient monuments across the landscape, whether they are energetic pathways or simply ancient trade routes, speaks to a desire to place sacred sites in a specific, interconnected web across the terrain. Some structures even seem to account for the slow, wandering shift of the Earth's magnetic North Pole over centuries, their alignments locked not to the moving pole, but to a more stable, perhaps truer north. This entire practice, sometimes called geomancy, reflects a worldview where the Earth was alive, a hill, a spring, a particular intersection of lines in the landscape, all held significance. By building a temple or a stone circle at such a point, the builders were tapping into what they perceived as the planet's own vitality. The monument became an acupuncture point for the Earth, a place where human intention and planetary energy could meet and resonate. It was the final, grandest scale of their mathematical language, transforming a local building into a symbol of the entire world. What does it mean that our ancestors may have seen the Earth as a single, sacred being and built their greatest wonders as love letters to its form? The silent stones of ancient temples may not have been so silent after all. A seventh principle of this mathematical language is now emerging from the shadows, one that engages not just the eyes but the ears. Recent research into sites like the Mayan Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza reveals a startling phenomenon. A hand clap at the base of its grand staircase does not produce a simple echo. It returns as a distorted chirp, a sound that eerily mimics the primary call of the Quetzal bird, a sacred animal in Mayan cosmology. This is not an architectural accident. It is acoustic engineering, a deliberate manipulation of sound waves designed into the stone geometry itself. Across the globe, in the underground hypogeum of Hal Saflieni on Malta, a deep, resonant chant can be made to travel through the rock-cut chambers, vibrating the very bones of the occupants. In these spaces, sound becomes a physical presence, a shaping force that can calm the mind or induce a trance-like state. How did they achieve this without oscilloscopes or sound analysis software? The builders were working with the mathematical principles of resonance and frequency. They understood that every space has a natural resonant frequency, a specific pitch at which it will vibrate most powerfully. By precisely calculating the dimensions, angles, and volumes of a chamber, they could tune it like a musical instrument. A room could be designed to amplify a specific chant or to create standing waves where sound seems to hang in the air, motionless and potent. This transforms our understanding of a ritual space. It was not just a visually symbolic environment. It was a multi-sensory instrument. The combination of sacred geometry, celestial alignments, and targeted acoustics would have created an overwhelming experience designed to guide participants into altered states of consciousness for spiritual or healing purposes. The architecture itself was an active participant in the ceremony. The stones were not merely carved, they were tuned. This sonic layer adds a profound dimension to the idea of an encoded language. The message was not just to be seen and understood, but to be felt and heard on a vibrational level. It suggests the ancients saw reality as a symphony of interlocking frequencies, and they learned to compose with them in stone. What other sensory experiences, now lost to time, were these mathematical masterpieces designed to evoke? This mathematical precision was not just for cosmic alignment or sacred acoustics. It was also the key to survival. The eighth principle woven into these ancient stones is one of pure, practical genius, structural integrity through mathematical optimization. These builders were master engineers who used geometry as a tool to defy gravity, outlast earthquakes, and stand firm against the relentless pressure of millennia. Look at the corbelled arches in Mayan architecture. They did not use the true, rounded Roman arch. Instead, they constructed a vault by stacking stones, each one projecting slightly inward over the one below until they met at the top. This creates a steep, triangular-shaped ceiling. The genius is in the angles. The precise, calculated incline of each stone directs the immense weight of the structure downward along strong, vertical lines rather than outward, which would cause the walls to collapse. It is a perfect balance of forces, a static equation realized in limestone and mortar. Even more breathtaking is the stonework of the Inca at places like Machu Picchu. They fit massive, irregularly shaped blocks together so perfectly that you cannot slip a piece of paper between them. This was not just meticulous craftsmanship. This was a profound understanding of seismic activity. In an earthquake, the ground shakes and shifts. A rigid, mortared wall would crack and crumble. But the Inca walls, with their complex jigsaw puzzle joints, actually dance. The stones shift and settle against each other during a tremor, absorbing and dissipating the energy, and then, when the shaking stops, they settle back into place. This is applied physics of the highest order, an intuitive grasp of how to manage kinetic energy, all achieved without a single drop of cement. Why go to such incredible lengths? These were not just techniques for building strong walls. They were encoded survival strategies. The mathematical language guaranteed that their message, whether carved in a Mayan temple or an Inca fortress, would endure. The structure itself had to last long enough for future generations to one day decipher its deeper codes. This practical resilience reveals a stunning foresight. Their methods anticipate modern engineering concepts like non-rigid construction and seismic dampening. It shows that this ancient language of numbers and forms was never just an abstract philosophy. It was a complete system of knowledge, as concerned with the brute force of gravity as it was with the harmony of the spheres. The stones had to stand before they could speak. The stone itself became a clock. This ninth principle transforms silent architecture into a dynamic timepiece, where the sun and moon write the hours across carved stone. At Chichen Itza, the strange, round tower known as the Caracol is not just a building. It is a sophisticated astronomical observatory. Its narrow slit windows are precisely aligned to frame the setting sun on the equinoxes and to track the extreme positions of Venus in its complex cycle across the sky. Every year, as the sun sets in perfect alignment, the building confirms its purpose. It is a machine for measuring the sky, its stone components engineered to filter the cosmos into a predictable, visible event. Far to the north, on a remote mesa in New Mexico, another timekeeping marvel exists. At the Fajada Butte site, 3 large stone slabs lean against a cliff face. On the summer solstice, a dagger of sunlight pierces the narrow gap between the rocks, striking a spiral petroglyph carved behind them. As the sun moves, the light dagger perfectly bisects the center of the spiral. This is not a vague sun symbol. It is a precise, calibrated instrument, a solar calendar that marks the longest day of the year with unerring accuracy. Creating such an effect required more than just placing a few rocks. It demanded generations of meticulous observation. The builders had to track the sun's path for years, noting its subtle shifts from solstice to solstice. They had to perform the complex mathematics of angles and shadows, calculating exactly where and how to position the slabs so that the interaction of light and stone would produce the desired effect, not just for 1 year, but for centuries. Why encode a calendar into a mountain? These structures were permanent libraries for temporal knowledge. A papyrus scroll could burn, an oral tradition could fade. But a mountain or a pyramid would endure. By building their understanding of time into the landscape, they ensured that future generations would always know when to plant, when to harvest, and when to celebrate the turning of the cosmic wheel. This practice reveals a profound desire to harmonize human life with the universe's grand rhythms. The building itself becomes a bridge between our fleeting existence and the vast, cyclical time of the cosmos. On the appointed day, when the sunlight hits its mark, the past speaks directly to the present. The ancient architect's calculation is validated once more, and for a moment you are synchronized with a mind that worked the stone thousands of years ago. The structure is an eternal witness, a stone chronicle of humanity's quest to find its place in time. These recurring patterns present us with a profound historical puzzle. How is it that the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan and the Great Pyramid of Giza both incorporate the value of pi in their proportions when an ocean and millennia separated their builders? Why do temples at Angkor Wat in Cambodia align with the same Draco constellation that was tracked by builders in ancient Egypt? The appearance of the golden ratio in both Greek sculpture and Mesoamerican temple layouts points to a mystery at the heart of human civilization itself. There are three primary theories that attempt to solve this riddle. The first is the idea of cultural diffusion, the slow migration of knowledge across continents through trade routes or lost voyages. Perhaps ancient seafarers we have yet to discover carried these mathematical concepts from one great civilization to another, seeding a common architectural language around the globe. The second theory is independent discovery. This suggests that when any human mind looks deeply at the natural world, certain truths become self-evident. The spiral of a seashell, the branching of a tree, the cycles of the stars all present the same mathematical patterns. Different cultures, gazing at the same universe, simply arrived at the same conclusions and encoded them into their sacred spaces. The third possibility is the most intriguing, that of a shared ancestral source. This theory proposes a lost, primordial civilization, a common root from which all later cultures sprouted, carrying with them a core system of knowledge that was then expressed in stone across the world. While each theory has its proponents, the most compelling answer may be a combination of all three. Human ingenuity is capable of independent genius, yet we have always been travelers and traders, sharing ideas across vast distances. The pyramids of Egypt and the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica may not look identical, but their underlying mathematical grammar speaks a startlingly similar language. This is not about proving one culture learned from another, but about recognizing a universal human impulse to encode our understanding of cosmic order into permanent form. The same mind that calculated the perfect angle for a corbelled arch in a Mayan city also devised the seismic-resistant walls of an Inca fortress. This was not copied knowledge, but knowledge born from the same fundamental challenges and the same observational brilliance. When we see these similarities, we are not looking at plagiarism. We are witnessing the shared fingerprints of humanity itself, a collective intuition for the harmonies that govern our world. The stones are telling us that our ancestors, in their separate corners of the globe, were all reading from the same universal book of nature. What does it say about us that we all seem to hear the same silent music of the spheres? Myth itself becomes a mathematical blueprint. The grand stories passed down through generations were not just entertainment. They were the source code for construction, providing the sacred numbers and proportions that would later be carved into stone. Consider the Hindu epic of Mount Meru, a colossal cosmic mountain said to stand at the center of all universes. The ancient texts describe it with very specific, almost technical dimensions, a mountain of pure gold, 84,000 leagues high. This was not a random number from a poet's imagination. When builders began constructing temples like those at Angkor Wat, they used these very numbers from the myth as their architectural foundation. The temple became a physical representation of the cosmic mountain, its towers and concentric galleries mirroring the described realms of gods and demigods that encircled the mythical peak. The abstract story of creation was translated into a mathematical plan, and that plan was then executed in sandstone and laterite. Why would they do this? The oral tradition provided the syntax, the grammatical rules for how the mathematical language should be structured. The myth of Mount Meru gave the builders a set of divine constants, numbers that held profound spiritual meaning. By building a temple that embodied those numbers, they were doing more than constructing a place of worship. They were building a portal, a place where the earthly and the divine could intersect because they shared the same mathematical essence. This practice transforms every myth from a simple story into a potential architectural brief. The Greek story of the Minotaur and its labyrinth is not just a tale of a hero and a monster, it is a description of a specific, complex geometric pattern. The numbers embedded in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the ages of the patriarchs in the Bible, the cycles of time in Mayan creation myths, all of these can be seen as numerical data sets waiting for their physical form. The builders were the translators, taking this narrative code and rendering it into a permanent, tangible reality. They were turning sound into stone, ensuring that even if the spoken story was forgotten, the mathematical truth within it would stand for millennia, waiting for a future generation to read the numbers and hear the echo of the old tale. What other ancient stories are not merely legends, but encrypted construction manuals for lost wonders? The stones were not just aligned with the stars, they were aligned with the soul. For the ancient builders, the mathematical language was far more than an engineering manual or an astronomical chart. It was a form of spiritual technology, a direct interface with the divine. The precision of their geometry was not for show. It was a functional component of a sacred machine designed to transform human consciousness. Nowhere is this more breathtakingly clear than at Borobudur in Indonesia, the world's largest Buddhist temple. This monumental structure is not merely a building, it is a three-dimensional mandala, a cosmic diagram rendered in stone. Its design follows a precise geometric pattern of concentric squares and circles, leading the pilgrim on a deliberate upward path. The journey begins at the base, which represents the world of desire, and ascends through the square terraces, symbolizing the world of form. Finally, the pilgrim reaches the circular terraces and the central stupa at the summit, representing the formless world of pure spirit. This is not a random walk. It is a guided meditation, an architectural algorithm for enlightenment. Every step, every turn, every vista is calculated to shift the pilgrim's awareness, moving them from the external and material to the internal and transcendent. The structure itself becomes a spiritual instructor, its silent stones teaching lessons about the path to nirvana. Why go to such lengths? The builders believed that specific ratios and shapes could act as conduits, channeling cosmic energies or stabilizing the mind for deep meditation. The perfect symmetry of a mandala, for instance, is not just visually pleasing, it is a tool for focusing attention and quieting internal chatter. By walking these sacred geometries, the initiate was not just learning about spiritual concepts, they were experiencing them directly. The building was an active participant in their inner journey. This transforms our understanding of every ancient monument that employs this principle. They were not passive places of worship where people simply gathered. They were interactive instruments for consciousness. The encoded mathematics in the walls and pathways were like the buttons on a complex device, and the correct sequence of movement and contemplation within that space was the operating procedure. The ultimate purpose was to unlock a higher state of being, to align the individual's inner universe with the perfect, mathematical order of the outer cosmos. The temple was a bridge between the human and the divine, and the only key that could open the gate was a mind attuned to the silent frequencies of sacred number. The most sophisticated engineering blueprints were never drawn on parchment. They were grown in forests and etched into riverbeds. Ancient architects looked to the living world and saw a masterclass in structural mathematics, a billion-year-old research and development lab offering solutions to problems of strength, efficiency, and form. They did not simply build in nature, they built like nature. A perfect example of this biomimicry is found in the branching patterns of trees. When a Gothic cathedral rises from the ground, its stone columns do not simply hold up the roof. They split into ribs, which then branch again into a delicate web of vaults, distributing the immense weight down to the earth in the same way an oak tree channels sap from its leaves down through its trunk. This is not a vague resemblance. It is the direct application of a fractal pattern, where a single, simple form repeats itself at different scales to create immense complexity and resilience. The builders were copying the tree's own mathematical strategy for supporting a massive structure with elegant efficiency. This same principle of natural mathematics appears in the spiral. The Fibonacci sequence, a series of numbers where each is the sum of the two before it, generates a spiral that mirrors the growth pattern of a nautilus shell. This exact spiral can be found in the layout of ancient temple complexes, guiding the path of a pilgrim in an ever-tightening curve toward the sacred center. Why use a snail's shell as a template for a holy site? Because the builders recognized that this spiral was not just a shape, it was a process, a universal algorithm for growth and convergence. By walking that same spiral, a person was physically reenacting a fundamental pattern of cosmic expansion and contraction. This philosophy of emulation extended to the very materials they used. Look at a honeycomb. Its hexagonal cells represent the most efficient way to partition a surface, using the least amount of material to create the greatest number of cells of equal size. This geometric perfection, born from the collective instinct of bees, was replicated in ancient floor tilings and structural cores. The builders were not just using a pretty pattern, they were adopting nature's own optimized formula for packing and strength. This entire approach reflects a profound worldview, one where human art was not meant to dominate the natural world, but to converse with it. A structure built with these principles does not clash with its landscape. It emerges from it. The fractal columns make the cathedral feel like a stone forest. The spiraling temple complex seems to unfold from the hillside like a geological feature. These buildings were designed to be symbiotic, to blend so seamlessly with their environment that they appeared to be an extension of the earth itself. This was the ultimate goal of encoding nature's mathematics into stone, to create a harmony so deep that the line between the built and the born simply vanished. What does it mean that our most enduring monuments were not meant to conquer nature, but to sing its song in stone? The mathematical language of the builders did not stop at the temple door. It scaled up to encompass entire cities, transforming urban landscapes into vast, open-air equations of stone and space. At Teotihuacan in Mexico, the Street of the Dead runs for miles, a colossal axis aligned precisely 15.5 degrees east of north. This was not a haphazard arrangement of buildings. The entire city, from the Pyramid of the Sun to the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, is part of a single, integrated grid. Its layout is a masterpiece of proportional zoning, where the distances between major structures reflect the same sacred ratios found in smaller temples. The city itself becomes a macrocosm of the cosmos, its streets and plazas mirroring the perceived order of the heavens. This mathematical urban planning created an environment where daily life was constantly framed by sacred geometry. A merchant walking to the market, a priest ascending a pyramid, a family living in a residential compound, all were moving within a carefully calculated diagram. The mathematics was not hidden, it was the very ground beneath their feet and the sky above their heads. This principle repeats itself across the globe. In the ancient Indus Valley city of Mohenjo-Daro, a similarly rigorous grid plan was employed. The streets were laid out in a perfect north-south, east-west orientation, creating uniform city blocks. A sophisticated water and drainage system was integrated into this grid, demonstrating that the mathematical order was as much about practical public health as it was about cosmic symbolism. The city's Great Bath, a large, meticulously engineered public pool, was centrally located and built with precise proportions, suggesting it served both a ritual and a social function within the mathematical whole. Why would an entire civilization choose to live inside a grid? This was far more than efficient planning. It was a profound statement about human society. The orderly street plan reflected a belief in a harmonious social order. By building a city that embodied mathematical perfection, the rulers and priests were attempting to manifest that same perfection in the community itself. The city became a machine for living, designed to align human activity with the immutable laws of the universe. The daily rhythm of life, from trade to governance to worship, was channeled through these sacred avenues and calibrated plazas. This urban code was a constant, silent teacher, reminding every citizen that they were part of a larger, intelligible design. When you walk through the ruins of such a place, you are not just exploring an ancient city. You are deciphering a grand, spatial manifesto on how to build a world that resonates with the hidden numbers of creation. Isaac Newton spent more time studying the pyramids than he did on his work with gravity. To him, Giza was not a tomb, but a colossal stone textbook, its dimensions holding the key to lost units of measurement and perhaps even a unified theory of the ancient world. He was not alone in this obsession. Johannes Kepler, struggling to understand the orbits of the planets, turned away from perfect circles and looked back to the harmonic ratios found in music and sacred geometry. He discovered that the planets move in ellipses and that their orbital speeds relate to each other in a precise musical harmony, a cosmic chord played out across the solar system. This was not a new idea, but a very old one reborn. The scientific revolution, which we often see as a complete break from the past, was in many ways a rediscovery. The great minds who built our modern world were often decipherers, looking at the same encoded stones we have been exploring and finding within them the seeds of new laws of physics. They understood that the ancient builders were not primitive mystics, but fellow investigators into the nature of reality, who had chosen to publish their findings in granite and limestone rather than on parchment. The legacy of this mathematical language is woven into the very fabric of modern science. In architecture, we see a direct return to these principles in the work of figures like Le Corbusier, who developed his own system of proportional design based on the human form and the golden ratio, creating buildings that feel inherently harmonious because they resonate with the same natural order as the Parthenon. In physics, the quest for a unified field theory, a single equation that describes all cosmic forces, is the ultimate expression of the ancient belief in a single, underlying mathematical order to the universe. Even computer science draws from this deep well. The algorithms that power our digital world are based on binary code and logical sequences, but the most advanced researchers are now looking at fractal geometry and neural networks, systems that mimic the branching patterns of trees and the interconnected web of the human brain. These are the same patterns the ancients saw and encoded. The stone circles and pyramids were the first computers, not digital but analog, processing cosmic data through alignment and proportion. When we use a GPS satellite to find our location, we are relying on the same principles of triangulation and global measurement that were encoded into the Great Pyramid's geometry. The language has not been lost, it has simply been translated. The ancient builders encrypted their knowledge into the most durable medium they could find, ensuring it would survive wars, famines, and the Dark Ages, waiting for a civilization with the tools to read it fully. We are that civilization. Their legacy is not a collection of dead ruins, but a living library, and we are only just beginning to check out the most advanced volumes. The romance of hidden codes can sometimes blind us to the truth. For every careful alignment we can measure with a theodolite, there are a dozen speculative claims built on sand. One of the most persistent involves the number pi. It is true that the ratio of the Great Pyramid's perimeter to its height is close to 2 pi, a fascinating detail that suggests a deliberate geometric play. But some enthusiasts take this further, claiming the builders encoded pi to 20 decimal places, a level of precision that is mathematically impossible with the tools and numerical systems available to them. This is a classic case of seeing a modern number in an ancient structure and projecting our own knowledge backward. The Egyptians did not use pi as a transcendental constant. Their mathematics, brilliant as it was, operated with fractions and whole number ratios. The appearance of a pi-like relationship is more likely a byproduct of their chosen slope and their primary unit of measure, the royal cubit. Similarly, the allure of sacred numbers can lead to exaggerated numerology, where any number that appears is forced to fit a predetermined spiritual schema. If you look hard enough at any large structure, you will find numbers that seem significant. The key is to ask whether the number is a product of the construction method itself, or if it appears with a frequency and context that suggests intentional encoding. The most dramatic leap, of course, is the claim of extraterrestrial intervention. This theory argues that the precision of ancient monuments is simply too great for a primitive human society to have achieved alone. But this does a profound disservice to the ingenuity of our ancestors. It ignores the mountains of archaeological evidence, from quarry marks and worker settlements to trial passages and engineering mistakes, that show a human fingerprint on every single stone. The slow, painstaking process of trial and error, of observation over generations, is a far more powerful explanation than an otherworldly shortcut. How do we separate the plausible from the pseudoscientific? The answer lies in a disciplined, evidence-based approach. Scholarly research does not dismiss the mathematical sophistication of the ancients, it simply demands proof. Did the builders have a concept for the number they are alleged to have used? Does the number appear consistently in their other works, or is it a one-off anomaly? Does the proposed encoding fit their known cosmology and building practices? When we apply this rigor, the picture becomes clearer and, in many ways, more impressive. The Inca's seismic-resistant walls are not less amazing because we understand the physics behind them. They are more amazing. The celestial alignments of Stonehenge are not diminished because they were calculated by patient astronomers. They are exalted. By stripping away the fantastical layers, we get closer to the real people who conceived these wonders. We see them not as passive recipients of alien knowledge, but as active, brilliant scientists and engineers in their own right. Their achievements stand on their own without the need for supernatural explanation. The true message encoded in the stone is one of human potential, a testament to what we can accomplish when we observe the world with care and build with a purpose that transcends the self. That is a code worth cracking. The knotted cords of a quipu might look like a simple tassel, but in the hands of an Inca administrator, they were a sophisticated data storage device. This was the hardware behind the mathematics, the tangible toolkit that translated abstract numbers into physical reality. Without the silicon chip, ancient builders relied on the cord, the shadow, and the plumb line. The quipu itself is a marvel of logical encoding. Different colored strings, various knot types, and distinct positions along the cord could represent anything from census data and tax records to complex mythological narratives, and most importantly for our story, architectural measurements. A master builder could use a quipu to store the precise dimensions for a temple wall or the required angles for a trapezoidal doorway, carrying the entire blueprint in a portable, durable form. Across the ocean, the ancient Egyptians employed a deceptively simple tool known as a merkit. This was essentially a plumb line with a narrow, forked sight made of palm leaf. By aligning the sight with a specific star, a priest astronomer could determine a true north-south axis with astonishing accuracy, laying the foundational line for an entire pyramid complex. This was not guesswork. It was a repeatable, observational technique that leveraged the predictable motion of the heavens as a cosmic reference point. For their geometric drafting, these builders turned to the Earth itself. They used knotted ropes where specific lengths between knots created predetermined triangles. The most famous of these is the 3-4-5 rope triangle. By staking out a rope with 12 equally spaced knots and forming a triangle with sides of 3, 4, and 5 units, a builder could instantly create a perfect right angle, the absolute cornerstone of stable construction. This was practical, hands-on mathematics in action. How did they calculate something as complex as the volume of a pyramidal frustum or a truncated pyramid? The Moscow mathematical papyrus from ancient Egypt contains the exact formula, proving they had developed advanced methods for volumetric calculation essential for managing the millions of stone blocks in a project. They used shadow clocks to track the sun's passage, not just for telling time, but for determining solstices and equinoxes, calibrating their celestial calendars with the turning of the seasons. The Greek astrolabe, a later invention, was a complex brass computer that could solve problems of time, distance, and celestial position. Each of these tools was an extension of the human mind, a physical algorithm designed to capture and process the mathematical relationships of the world. Understanding these techniques is the final key to demystifying the great monuments. It proves that human ingenuity, sharpened by generations of meticulous observation and refined through practical experiment, was more than sufficient to raise these wonders. The builders were not magicians. They were engineers, astronomers, and mathematicians who built their own computers from cord, stone, and shadow. Their greatest tool was not made of metal or rope, but was the disciplined, patient, and brilliantly observant human mind itself. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as the ultimate expression of this ancient mathematical language, a multi-layered cipher written in millions of tons of stone. Let us decipher its code, starting with its breathtakingly simple yet profound shape. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its height is not a random number. It gives us a value very close to 2 pi. This means that if you take the height of the pyramid and multiply it by 2 pi, you get the length of one side of its base. The builders essentially squared the circle, creating a structure that harmoniously relates a square, its base, to a circle defined by the constant pi. This was their first grand statement, a declaration that the fundamental geometry of the universe could be captured in a single, monumental form. Next, we find the golden ratio embedded within its internal geometry. The ratio of the length of the face of the pyramid to the height from the base to the apex platform approximates phi, the golden ratio of 1.618. This divine proportion, celebrated in nature and art, was deliberately engineered into the pyramid's very silhouette, but the encoding goes far beyond shape and into the realm of global measurement. The pyramid's perimeter, measured in royal cubits, is 30,000, 24 of these ancient units. If you envision this perimeter as a circle's circumference, the radius of that circle would be remarkably close to the pyramid's own height. This is a second, independent geometric play linking linear and circular measurement. Even more astonishing is the relationship to the Earth itself. Multiply the pyramid's perimeter by 43,200, and the result is a figure within a tiny fraction of the Earth's equatorial circumference. The number 43,200 is itself a key precessional number, linking a measurement of space directly to a cycle of time. This is not a series of coincidences. It is a deliberate, interlocking system. The pyramid's physical orientation reinforces this cosmic intent. Its base is aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy of less than 1/15th of a single degree. Achieving this required an intimate knowledge of the heavens, likely using a tool like the Merkit to sight on a circumpolar star. This precise north-south axis anchors the entire structure to the planet's spin. Then we look to the interior. The so-called air shafts emanating from the king's chamber are not ventilation ducts. One set points directly to the circumpolar stars, the eternal, undying stars of Egyptian cosmology. The other set targets the belt of the constellation Orion, which was associated with the god Osiris. These are not rough alignments. They are precise targeting solutions, frozen in stone for an epoch around 2500 BC. What does this collective cipher tell us? The Great Pyramid is a unified model of the cosmos. It encodes the mathematical constants of pi and phi. It mirrors the spherical form of the Earth through its perimeter-to-height ratio. It is locked to the planet's axis of rotation, and it points toward the specific stars of its creator's afterlife beliefs. Every layer of its design speaks a different dialect of the same universal mathematical language, from the geometry of the Earth to the geometry of the heavens. It is a masterclass in data permanence, a stone library whose volumes are its angles, its shafts, and its immovable mass. It asks us a simple, profound question. Was this a tomb for a king, or was it a textbook for a civilization? The Parthenon stands on the Acropolis not as a ruin, but as a silent lesson in mathematical harmony. Its columns and spaces are not arranged by chance, but according to a precise symphony of proportion, where every element relates to the whole through a foundational 9:4 ratio. You see this ratio repeated everywhere, from the building's width to its height, and from the spacing of its columns to the depth of its porch. This was not a random aesthetic choice. It was the application of a philosophical belief that true beauty is a product of mathematical order, a physical reflection of the perfect, eternal forms that Greek philosophers believed underpinned our messy reality. The building itself is an argument in stone, stating that beauty and truth are one and the same, and that both can be found through number. But the architects went even further, engineering the Parthenon to account for the imperfections of human perception. Look closely at what appears to be a forest of straight lines. The stylobate, the platform on which the columns stand, curves upward ever so slightly in the middle. The columns themselves are not straight but swell gently in the center, a refinement known as intosses. If they were perfectly straight, our eyes would perceive them as bending inward under the weight of the roof. These subtle curves are not flaws, they are brilliant optical corrections, mathematical adjustments for the way our brains process visual information. The Parthenon was designed not for an ideal world of perfect lines, but for the real world of the human eye. It was built to look perfect, which required a deep understanding of both geometry and psychology. This fusion of intellectual and artistic purpose elevates the structure from a mere temple to a three-dimensional treatise. Every column, every metope, every triglyph is a word in a philosophical dialogue about the relationship between the measurable universe and our experience of it. The Parthenon does not just house the goddess Athena, it embodies her attributes of wisdom and rational order. It is a building that thinks, its marble logic whispering that to understand the cosmos, we must first learn to speak the language of proportion. Angkor Wat does not simply sit on the land, it speaks to the sky. This sprawling temple complex in Cambodia is perhaps the ultimate expression of the ancient mathematical language. a structure that seamlessly weaves astronomy, geography, and mythology into a single, breathtaking blueprint. Its 5 iconic towers are not just architectural features, they are a direct representation of the 5 peaks of Mount Meru, the mythical cosmic mountain at the center of the Hindu universe. The vast moats surrounding the temple are not for defense, they are the cosmic oceans that, according to legend, encircle that sacred peak. The entire site is a microcosm, a perfect-scale model of the cosmos as understood by its builders. But the encoding goes far deeper than this symbolic representation. From above, the layout of the central temple complex mirrors the stars of the Draco constellation as they would have appeared in the sky at the time of its construction in the 12th century. The main towers align with the key stars of the dragon's tail, while the surrounding structures and causeways trace the rest of its coiled form. This is not a vague resemblance, it is a deliberate cartographic act, stamping a celestial map onto the terrestrial plane. The dimensions of the temple compound itself are a complex calendar carved in stone. The distances between key gates and galleries encode the cycles of the Hindu eras, known as yugas, which span millions of years. The number of statues, the steps in a staircase, the repetitions of a bas-relief, all seem to count the days and years of cosmic time. This integration of multiple domains of knowledge is what makes Angkor Wat such a powerful case study. It is a map of both heaven and earth. It is a clock tracking both human history and divine cycles. And it is a spiritual diagram, its very pathways designed to guide a pilgrim from the outer world of illusion toward the inner sanctum of enlightenment. The Khmer builders were not just stacking sandstone blocks, they were compiling a multidimensional encyclopedia. They used the same mathematical grammar to describe the mythic geography of Mount Meru, the precise arrangement of the Draco constellation, and the vast scales of calendrical time. A single walk through the temple was meant to be a journey through space, time, and spirit simultaneously. This is the highest function of the encoded language, to create a unified field of knowledge where science, story, and sanctity are no longer separate disciplines, but different expressions of the same underlying cosmic order. The stones of Angkor Wat ask us to see the universe as an interconnected whole, where every star in the sky has its reflection on the earth, and every number in a calendar echoes a step toward the divine. These mathematical blueprints were not intended for cold analysis, but for profound human experience. The ancient builders possessed an intuitive grasp of neuroesthetics, understanding that certain proportions and forms could directly shape the emotions and thoughts of anyone who walked within their creations. A structure could be engineered not just to stand, but to feel a certain way, operating as a sophisticated machine for the human mind. The most famous of these psychological tools is the golden ratio. When we look at a rectangle built with these 1:1.618 proportions, something in our brain responds with a sense of inherent rightness and quiet pleasure. This is why we find it so often in nature, from the spiral of a galaxy to the curve of a seashell, and why the builders of the Parthenon embedded it so carefully into their design. They were tapping into a pre-wired appreciation for a pattern that is fundamental to life itself, but the psychological toolkit was far broader. Perfect symmetry, like that found in a mandala or the facade of a great temple, triggers a deep-seated craving for order and predictability. In a chaotic and unpredictable world, stepping into a space of perfect balance offers a powerful psychological release, a moment of cognitive calm where the mind can settle and focus. Conversely, the builders also knew how to use scale to evoke awe. The sheer, overwhelming mass of the Great Pyramid's core blocks or the impossible height of a Gothic cathedral's nave are not just engineering feats. They are deliberate psychological assaults on the senses, designed to make an individual feel small, to crush the ego and open the mind to something larger than itself. This emotional engineering extends to the very paths we walk. The labyrinth, a complex unicursal path found in cultures from ancient Greece to medieval Europe, is a geometric puzzle that forces a slow, contemplative pace. There is no chance of getting lost, only the inevitability of the winding journey toward the center. Walking it is a form of active meditation, its mathematical layout guiding the walker into a calmer, more introspective state of consciousness. Why would they encode these psychological triggers into stone? Because the ultimate purpose of many sacred sites was transformation. A pilgrim did not travel for miles just to look at a beautiful building. They came to be changed by sequencing these mathematical experiences, first the overwhelming awe of scale, then the calming balance of symmetry, followed by the focused journey of a labyrinth. The architects could choreograph a spiritual and emotional arc. The building itself became a guide, leading a visitor through fear, wonder, and peace, preparing their mind for a transcendental encounter. The stones were silent psychiatrists, using the universal language of geometry to heal, to inspire, and to awaken. This mathematical language was never meant for public consumption. Its deepest truths were locked away, accessible only to those who had undergone years of rigorous training and initiation. From the priestly astronomers of Egypt to the master masons of medieval Europe, this knowledge was a closely guarded secret, a sacred trust passed from teacher to student in a carefully controlled lineage. This secrecy was not about hoarding power, but about preserving the integrity of the message. Imagine trying to explain advanced calculus to someone who has not yet learned to count. The uninitiated mind might misinterpret the symbols, reducing a profound cosmic truth to a simple superstition, or worse, dismissing it as nonsense. By controlling access, the guardians of this knowledge ensured it would be understood in its full context, with all its layered meanings intact. The structures they built became the ultimate test of this understanding. A cathedral is not just a building, it is a puzzle box. Its proportions, its alignments, its sculptural programs all form a coherent system. To the casual observer, it is a place of worship, but to the initiated mason who knew the secret geometry, every arch and column spoke a specific part of a much larger philosophical statement. Full comprehension required more than just intellectual knowledge. It demanded experiential insight gained through ritual and direct participation in the building process. This layered access transformed the act of decoding into a spiritual journey. The knowledge itself was the reward for a seeker's dedication. This system of initiation created a living barrier against the trivialization of sacred principles. It ensured that the mathematical language inscribed in stone would resonate with its intended power only for those prepared to receive it. The great monuments were not just libraries, they were silent universities, their very stones serving as the final examination for those who sought to read them. What profound truths were considered so dangerous that they had to be hidden in plain sight, waiting centuries for a world finally ready to learn their language? Their mathematical genius was not confined to the stars, but reached into the very air they breathed and the water they drank. This sophisticated language provided elegant solutions to the most pressing environmental challenges, transforming monumental structures into life-sustaining machines. The so-called air shafts of the Great Pyramid, for example, were long a mystery. We now understand they function with the precision of a mathematical equation, regulating internal temperature and humidity through principles of convective airflow. The specific angles and cross-sectional areas of these narrow channels create a constant passive exchange of air, drawing in drier, cooler air from the north and allowing warmer, moisture-laden air to escape through the southern shafts. This was not magic, it was applied physics, a deliberate use of geometric form to solve the problem of preserving a delicate internal environment deep within millions of tons of stone. The structure itself breathes, its stone lungs operating on a calculus of pressure and density. Half a world away, in the arid regions of India, another masterpiece of environmental mathematics rises from the earth. The ancient step wells are not simple holes in the ground. They are breathtaking inverted pyramids, their symmetrical staircases descending in a precise geometric progression deep into the water table. The intricate, repeating patterns of steps and arches are far more than decorative. They create a massive surface area that maximizes shade and minimizes direct sunlight on the water, dramatically reducing evaporation in a hot climate. The staircase design also manages the water's accessibility, allowing people to reach the life-giving resource easily regardless of the seasonal water level. Each step is a variable in a hydrological equation, a calculated response to the challenge of water scarcity. Why encode these solutions in such beautiful, complex forms? Because for these builders, there was no separation between the practical and the sacred. A step well was both a vital public utility and a temple to the divine feminine, its mathematical perfection honoring the water it contained. A pyramid's ventilation was an engineering necessity that also mirrored the cosmic journey of the soul, with air shafts pointed toward imperishable stars. Their knowledge was holistic, encompassing both the abstract symbolism of the cosmos and the applied science required to thrive within a specific landscape. The mathematical language was therefore a tool for sustainability. It enabled them to harness natural forces passively, to store precious resources efficiently, and to build communities resilient to their climate's demands. These structures stand as permanent lessons in living in harmony with our environment, their stones whispering that the most profound wisdom is often written in the simple, elegant math of survival. The language of stone never stood still. It evolved, shifting its grammar and vocabulary as human thought itself advanced across the centuries. We can trace this evolution from the earliest, most direct statements to the most complex and layered philosophical arguments. The Neolithic stone circle is a simple, declarative sentence written in monoliths. Its primary purpose was to mark the solstice sun, a single, powerful alignment that spoke to the immediate needs of an agricultural society. The message was clear and functional, a cosmic clock for planting and harvest, but as cultures grew more complex, so did their mathematical vocabulary. The Great Pyramids of Egypt introduced a new syntax of volumetric precision and celestial targeting, embedding not just annual cycles but multi-millennial star maps into their immense geometry. This was a leap from marking a single day to encoding a vision of eternity. The classical Greek temple then wove in the language of perfect proportion, arguing that beauty itself was a mathematical truth to be engineered into every column and pediment. Finally, the Gothic cathedral represents a kind of flourishing Baroque period in this architectural language. It synthesizes the celestial alignment of the stone circle, the structural audacity of the pyramid, and the harmonic ratios of the Greek temple, then adds entirely new chapters on acoustics and neuroesthetics. Its ribbed vaults are not just structural, they are fractal, branching like trees to channel weight and light in a symphony of stone. This progression is not a story of one culture copying another, but of a universal human impulse refining its tools. The core principle remained constant, the desire to embed cosmic order into physical form. But the methods transformed, from the brute force solar alignment of a few massive stones to the delicate, calculated interplay of light, sound, and proportion in a cathedral's nave. This evolution reflects a deepening understanding of mathematics, yes, but also a shift in what societies valued. the Neolithic circles served the community's survival. The Gothic cathedrals served the soul's ascent. Each structure is a frozen moment in the long conversation between humanity and the universe, a dialogue written in the evolving script of sacred geometry. What will future archaeologists make of the mathematical codes we are embedding in our own monumental works today? Decoding these stone-bound secrets carries a profound ethical weight. The right to interpret is not a given, it is a responsibility. When a researcher from one culture attempts to decipher the sacred geometry of another, they risk turning living tradition into a cold intellectual puzzle. The mathematical codes of the Maya or the Inca are not merely abstract formulas. They are the spiritual and cultural heritage of living descendant communities. To extract this knowledge without their guidance, without their consent, is a form of academic theft. It silences the very voices who may hold the keys to the deepest meanings. The only ethical path forward is through collaborative research, where Western scientists work as partners with indigenous elders and knowledge keepers. This is not about political correctness, it is about accuracy and respect. The true meaning of a temple's alignment or a pyramid's proportion may not be found in a spreadsheet, but in an oral story passed down for generations. Decoding must become a dialogue, not a monologue. This leads us to an even larger philosophical question. If cultures across the globe truly did independently arrive at the same complex mathematical principles, what does that reveal about the human mind itself? It suggests that our brains are hardwired to perceive a certain universal order. The golden ratio feels beautiful to us not because we were taught it, but because our neural architecture recognizes it as a fundamental pattern of nature. Our very cognition seems to be tuned to the same frequencies that shape galaxies and seashells. This shared mathematical intuition points to a deep, inherent connection between human consciousness and the cosmos. We are not separate observers of a mathematical universe, we are participants within it. Our minds are products of the same natural laws that we then go on to discover and encode. When we stand before the Great Pyramid or walk the labyrinth of Chartres Cathedral, we are not just looking at an ancient calculator, we are encountering a mirror. The builders were exploring the outer universe, but in doing so, they were also mapping the inner universe of human thought. The act of decoding their work forces us to ask who we are. Are we isolated individuals in a random cosmos, or are we expressions of a universal mind, all tapping into the same deep well of geometric truth? The stones ask the question, but the answer lies within us. A new chapter in this ancient mystery is being written not with chisels, but with lasers. The future of decoding these stone-bound secrets now relies on a powerful alliance between archaeology and digital innovation. Advanced technologies like three-dimensional laser scanning are creating flawless digital replicas of entire monuments, allowing researchers to measure angles and distances with sub-millimeter precision from the comfort of a laboratory. This process has already revealed subtle curvatures in supposedly straight walls and geometric relationships that are impossible to perceive with the naked eye. At the same time, ground-penetrating radar pulses energy deep into the Earth, mapping hidden chambers, buried foundations, and vast, unseen networks of tunnels without moving a single stone. These subsurface features are often the missing pieces of the architectural puzzle, revealing how a site's mathematical design extends far below the surface we walk on. But perhaps the most profound tool is artificial intelligence, with its ability to process immense datasets. An AI algorithm can analyze the dimensions of 1,000 temples across a continent in seconds, searching for recurring ratios and proportional systems that a human researcher might spend a lifetime trying to connect. These machines are not replacing intuition, they are amplifying it, spotting the faint, ghostly fingerprints of a universal builder's code etched into the global landscape. This technological leap promises a revolution in our understanding. We are no longer limited to what we can see and touch. We can now scan, model, and compute, peeling back layers of time and dirt to read the full message. What profound alignments or harmonic equations lie concealed beneath the soil, waiting for the right frequency of energy to reveal their silent, mathematical song? This journey through the language of stone leaves us with a humbling realization. Our ancestors were not primitive people groping in the dark. They were master scientists and artists, their minds as sharp and analytical as any modern engineer. They chose the most durable canvas imaginable, the very bones of the earth, to inscribe a legacy meant to outlast empires and languages. From the celestial targeting of the Great Pyramid to the neuroesthetic calm of a Greek temple, they were communicating across the abyss of time. Their message was not about kings or conquests, but about the fundamental harmonies of the cosmos, the intricate geometry of the human spirit, and the vast potential of a mind that observes the world with care. Every aligned stone and perfect proportion was a testament to their deep understanding of a universe governed by mathematical law. As our own technology finally allows us to read this global library, we are not just uncovering their secrets. We are recovering a part of our own heritage. The wisdom they encrypted is not a relic, it is a conversation starter. It challenges our assumptions about progress and reminds us that innovation can be driven by a search for meaning, not just power. This exploration invites us to look at every ancient structure with new eyes. The next time you see a photograph of a stone circle or walk through the ruins of an old temple, pause for a moment. Look past the weathered surface, see the careful angles, sense the intentional space. You are not looking at a pile of rocks. You are looking at a page from a universal book, written in a language we are all born understanding. What hidden message might you begin to decode? Share what ancient mysteries capture your imagination in the comments below, and subscribe to continue this journey into the codes of our past.